Hi everybody and welcome to another piano review video here at Merriam Pianos. It's been a little while since we explored uprights and today we've got a beauty for you. We're going to be looking at Bechstein Academy's 124 upright piano, handmade in Germany and all kinds of musical things to offer. We're going to be talking about the sound, the action, the cabinet, and of course sharing a number of observations with you that hopefully you're going to find really helpful and interesting. If you haven't had a chance to subscribe, please do. We'd love for you to join our community. And so without further ado, let's get started with the 124 right away. So before we get started with the specifics of the sound, I really want to talk about why I feel a particular connection to the Academy 124, because this is definitely one of my favorite upright pianos in the entire world. Not to say that I necessarily think it's the absolute best. Obviously, there are instruments that are 2 and 3 times this price that I think on an analytical, objective level outperform it. But there's something about this instrument that holds a very warm, special place in my heart. And I think it comes from my first experience, my very first impression of this instrument. So this goes back 5 or 6 years. Up until that point, I wasn't particularly familiar with, I guess, the minutiae of the Bechstein line. I didn't really know a lot of the models very well. I had played on a few of them. But it didn't have the, I guess I just didn't have the context and the perspective to understand what it was that I was playing. And so my first meaningful contact or first introduction to the brand in a substantive way was from my friend, Adrean Farrugia, who is also just an amazing Canadian pianist and a brilliant human being. And one of his first professional instruments was actually a Bechstein Academy upright. Not that dissimilar to the 124. And he had always told me that was one of the most connective musical instruments that he had ever had. And that was before he had moved over to a grand. And I had played his piano, and I had to agree it was really quite fantastic. But it was at a point where I was still kind of honing my ear, and I was really getting into the kind of the esoteric world of pianos. And then 5 or 6 years ago, I was down at the NAMM show, and Bechstein had just released the 124. This is a fairly recent redesign that they came out with as part of the redesign of several of their instruments in the concert line and the Academy line. And they had a 124 sitting at the Bechstein booth at NAMM. And I walked up to it, and I did not know the model. I did not really know anything. They had a Concert 8. They had a number of other instruments there. But this was the one I sat down at first. And I just instantly had this super connective musical moment with this piano. And it only lasted about 10 minutes. But I sat there and I was totally fascinated by how connected I felt with the action. It was more responsive than any upright that I had previously had any experience with. And the bass response was just so well balanced. I find that on upright pianos it tends to drift in one of two ways. You either get a really boomy, thunderous bass, which is just horribly unbalanced with the rest of the instrument. I'm talking about higher level uprights. I mean, lower level uprights, bass response of any kind is, you just take what you get. But on upper level uprights, it tends to be over accentuated to try and compensate for the fact that it doesn't have the cabinetry of the grand to let that bass frequency really resonate and get out into the space. Or it goes the other way, and it tends to be super clear but very trebly. There's lots of other harmonics going on. But to get something where it just feels natural, where you hit that bass, the lower third of the instrument, and it responds as though you're sitting behind a 6-foot grand or a 6'2", 6'3" grand. Like it just feels right. And that was the experience I had with this instrument. And I was down there with the president of the company, Alan Merriam, at the time. He sat down, he had a very similar reaction, and we just came away with this a super positive impression of the instrument. And that's when we really started to focus on this particular model, get it into the showroom, start to expose our customers to it. You know, and we've never looked back. This has been one of the most successful instruments in a premium upright category in our showroom's history, in our company's history. So now let's get into the specifics, now that I've had many years to get to know this instrument, and you know, what do I have to share with you that might help you understand or get to know the piano just a little bit better. So let's start with the basics. It's a 124, like most European models. It's named after the height of the instrument, so it's 124 centimeters. That puts it at around a 49-inch, 49.5-inch, something like that. And the instrument is made in Germany by Bechstein, and it is part of their Academy line. So it's not their top concert line, which in the uprights they refer to as the residence line, except the Concert 8, which they also call the concert line. It's, yeah, a little bit convoluted. If you go to their website, they do a fairly good job of laying it out. But basically, if you're buying an upright that says C. Bechstein on it, it could say one of three things. Concert, which only refers to the Concert 8, then residence, which refers to a handful of models that are built to the same quality level as the Concert 8, but different spec, different size. And then the Academy line, which is also still German, but essentially takes some of the design aspects and some of the material costs, reduces that, but maintains the same kind of quality control, and it's coming out of the same factory, built by the same people. And so this is what we have. We have about a 49-inch, 49.5-inch upright piano made in Germany by Bechstein at a slightly less sophisticated design spec to what you would get out of like the Residence 124 or the Concert 8. Bechstein makes its own hammers. It's one of the few companies out there that does that. And what I find, I mean, it's just the nerd in me. I find this really cool that this model has its own hammer. So this isn't like the upright hammer that goes on the 124. This is the 124 Academy hammer design. So that means that everything about the way that they taper the tails, the way that the hammer is weighted, how the wool is packed, everything about it is specific to this model. So they can really achieve a high level of control over everything from how pronounced the attack is, you know, the bloom of the note, all of those things where really great hammers can have an influence, voicing obviously. And when you start to play the instrument in terms of the tone, what you're getting, like I mentioned, balance. If I had to describe one thing about the A124, or if I had to put it in a single word, balance is what I would use to describe this. It's very effortless to get an incredibly balanced tone out of the piano. Yeah, you know, it's like any great instrument. you know that you're behind something that's beautifully made when the response is just so effortless. You know, you feel like you're painting. Even if you're not a great painter, you just pick up the brush and you feel like any color sort of makes a pretty little scribble on the white canvas. And that's kind of how I feel with this instrument. One of the reasons why you get such a great response out of Bechstein pianos generally, and one of the things that I really love about the fact that they do this even at the Academy line, is they're really picky with the spruce that they put in these pianos. So in every Academy piano, and this includes the 120, they're not using any spruce that was grown below an altitude of 800 meters. So it's all between 800 to 1,000 meters. Basically, you're getting alpine spruce. Why is that a big deal? Well, across multiple varieties of spruce, one of the things that instrument makers prize is a spruce that grows slowly and grows consistently. And so the thing with a lot of alpine growing climates is it is consistent. There isn't a ton of moisture. The moisture is fairly, it comes at regular intervals and it comes at fairly regular amounts year to year. And so you get trees that have really consistent growth rings. The density through that wood is really consistent. That makes it a lot easier, when you're drying the instrument or curing the wood, you get nice consistent, cured wood through it. And it's not that typical to find, well, two things. Not that typical to find a manufacturer who actually discloses that information, puts it in writing. But it's also very consistent with a type of spruce that you find in the very upper echelons of the piano world. And let's remember that this instrument, if we're talking about US dollars, this is in the 20,000-ish range. This sits in the 25,000 USD range. Here in Canada, we're over 30, but trying to put it into a price category that most of our viewers can connect with. So that's one of the reasons why we get that nice balanced resonant tone, is the care that they put into the soundboard. I've already made mention of the hammers as well. I'd say the third thing that really contributes to a nice even bass is the fact that they hand wind the strings. That part isn't unusual. But the number of strings that they discard, the number of, the selectiveness by which they put the strings onto the Academy is pretty astounding. They haven't said this, but I know one of the things that Bösendorfer used to do with their hammers is they'd start with the very top model and the best hammers made it onto the Imperials. Then the second cut made it onto, the next level down, and so on and so forth. And I wouldn't be surprised, because I've kind of noticed that this may actually be the case on the Bechsteins as well, is that the very, very best wound bass hammers make it onto their concert series. The ones that aren't quite clear enough to be considered for the concert series go to the Academy, and then they sort of start trickling down into some of the Hoffman line. And so you still have an incredibly clear, defect-free, there's no weird, ringing upper partials or false beating that's going on in a lot of those bass notes. And so super clear bass, nice resonant mid-range, clear treble. It's not an accentuated treble like you get a little bit with the Concert 8, where it's so clear and it's a very highly complex treble. This is not a complex treble, but it's very clear. So, and the resonance is there. So in a lot of ways, this reminds me of the top level Grotrians that you could get. It's a very simple tone. There's not a ton of upper complexity to the tone, but it's just deadly clear, like laser beams. So that's a quick discussion on the sound that you're getting out of this instrument. I'm going to move on to action now. Bechsteins have always been very well known for their actions, the accuracy, how well they regulate them, the repetition speed they're able to get out of this, the control that you can get out of it at both a lower dynamic range and an upper dynamic range, and certainly the 124 is no exception to that. Yeah, very easy to voice chords, but a resistance that's a lot closer to a mid-range grand than what you get on most uprights. And anyone who plays a lot of grands and taller uprights will know exactly what I mean by this. Sometimes when you get a taller upright where the resistance has been regulated so that you're getting the weighting of a grand, the control in either super fast passages or very lower, softer dynamic ranges is atrociously bad. Like it's the reason why uprights have, with some circles, certainly older designs, a reputation of just not being up to the job when you're talking about complex classical music. And I'm not going to confess to understand why exactly Bechstein's geometry or the way the Bechstein regulates this somehow is able to overcome this. But this is an action that feels like it's just as substantial as a grand, but yet the control in the lower dynamic range is great and there's no sacrifice of repetition speed. Like, that's crazy. So that's a quick discussion about the action. The cabinet is available in two styles. What you're looking at here is called the Implicent. It's also available in what's called Style, and the Style is a little more conventional. I love this look. Kind of a nice, slightly contemporary vibe. This is the one that we often get in at the store. It's also available in a number of different finishes. You can see those on Bechstein's website. They do some really lovely mahoganies. They do some really lovely, polished, well, go to the website and check it out because I know that different instruments have the different finishes that are available by Bechstein. The person that I think is going to be most intrigued by this instrument is, first of all, somebody who isn't necessarily constrained by budget, but who had no idea that an upright could give them this musical experience. So if you're walking into a showroom and you sort of have this arbitrary figure of say, well, I don't want to spend any more than $10,000, please do yourself a favor and at least just play this instrument if it's available, because there's a very good chance that you simply don't know what type of a musical connection is possible with an instrument. And I would say that if there was one piano kind of in the upper mid price range that really would compel somebody to make the price jump, it would be this instrument. It's not going right to the top. This isn't going to the Concert 8, which is more than, it's like at least double the price of this instrument. But it's going to be about twice the price of what you would pay for the very best Japanese instrument of about the same size. So that's definitely one person or one type of customer that I would say, come and get in front of this piano. If you're already in this type of a price range, there's a good chance you've seen or are considering this instrument anyway. And then lastly, somebody who may have been thinking about a grand piano and were looking, in the $20,000 to $30,000 range, and space was a bit of a consideration. So you were having to think about going with a 5', 5'1". I would definitely spend a bit of time in front of this instrument because especially if you can give yourself a little bit of space away from the wall, you'd be surprised at the maturity, the structure that you get in the lower range of this instrument. Like I said, balance is one of the things that comes immediately to mind when I think of this piano. This does not feel like you're compromising in any area, even though it happens to be an upright piano. So thank you so much for taking this little journey of exploration on the Bechstein Academy 124. I hope that you come away with this with a bit more of an understanding about what to expect from this piano. You've had a chance to hear it for a few minutes during during the review. What's more, thank you for checking out the channel. If it's the first time you have visited the channel, it's the first review you've stumbled across, we would really love it if you subscribed, hit that notification bell, because we have an ever-expanding community of music lovers and piano lovers, and we just love the fact that we can interact with you, respond to the comments, learn a little bit more from you, ask us questions, we ask you questions. It's a ton of fun. So we hope to see you back for more videos. We hope that you become a subscriber, and we hope that you've now fallen a little bit more in love with the Bechstein Academy 124. We'll see you back soon. My name is Stu Harrison. Have a great day.